Well, this is inside the Duomid. It's quite breezy out. I've measured gusts up to about 22, 23 miles per hour, and you can see the walls do come in on you. That's not really a major problem. There's a couple of things you can do. You have to remember you have a lot of space in the middle, and when you're in the middle there's nothing coming in. So if you were packing up or you needed to do something, then you can do it in the middle, even if you've got the pole here. Now I'm going to try and get the A-frame pole that MLD does, because that would kind of be interesting. But when you're lying down, which, let's face it, most of us are doing when we're in camp, then the sides, you know, they're nowhere near us, you know, unrestricted head, shoulder, you know, full movement, you know, in that regard. I wouldn't angle the center pole too much more, especially when it's very windy, because then you're going to put too much pressure on an angled pole. So I would keep it, you know, fairly vertical. I think the most I would do would be maybe a 5 or 10 degree slope in the middle. Just, you know, angle it slightly just to give you, you know, a little bit more room.
And of course what you have to remember is that these are soft-sided shelters, not brick chicken houses.
If you're enjoying this video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification button to all, and keep watching. Right, now let's just have a... Now obviously we've pitched this into the wind, tail into the wind, rather than the Duomid's back into the wind. So we'll...
A couple of things to note here. This is pitched further down the valley, therefore receiving less buffeting wind.
All right, we'll kind of see how that goes. So you can see the sides are... Oops, and of course the camera won't. So it's not really enough wind to tell, but you know, you do have your shoulders, you know, are on each side. I mean, you know, I'm not, you know, that's that shoulder there, that's that shoulder there. Obviously we're in an inner here, so that also is you know, completely different to the, you know, to the Duomid as well, when I did not have, you know, the inner setup. You know, if you are using the inner, then, you know, you are going to be quite restricted, and clearly the sides, you know, do move in, which, you know, you're going to expect, as they would if you had the inner in the Duomid, in all honesty. Whereas in this configuration here, obviously the fly sheet is, you know, is over there and over there. So again, if you were in the middle of the Duomid, then it would be the same. It's just a different, you know, it's a different setup, you know, in many ways. But it's been my friend Chris stayed in his Duomid last night. This is how we set it up last night, and it hasn't blown away. But I must admit, it's holding pretty well. It's definitely quieter than the cuben Trail Star, but cuben is always noisier. Oh, don't forget earplugs. If you put earplugs in, then you won't hear it anyway. This is pitched tail to the wind. Now, a question for Duomid users: I've always pitched the Duomid back to the wind, and because I've pitched this one kind of like, you know, lengthways to the wind, I'm kind of wondering, in a way, should we pitch the Duomid head or tail to the wind, so that it's only blowing in that way rather than that way. Obviously, just another thing to bear in mind, wind does move. It's not always just going to be coming in, you know, from one angle. Like I said, last night the wind was coming that way, and now it's coming from behind. If we look around the outside, then you can see that this side here, you know, is taking the brunt of the wind, which is why I think it's good that I pitched it that way with that line there helping. Otherwise all the pressure would just be on those or on this side panel here. So I think pitching it that way actually is a good idea. It has stood up well. There's no pegs have slipped. It doesn't look like any lines have come loose or anything. When we look at the Duomid in this pretty strong wind, then you can see that it's bowing in quite a lot there. But like I said, in the center it would be quite spacious, and where your head is, there's plenty of room. But yeah, I definitely can't help but think why we don't pitch it side into the wind more. Thing is, it's holding up and protecting you. That's the important thing. And inside with that wind, so even though you're being buffeted outside, you are, you know, very well protected. Like I said, the back wall is, you know, is touching me a little, but then I'm so used to that it just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't bother me. You know, I'm just used to that because it's the overall user experience, the overall space that I have, you know, in here. Okay, so I can kneel up in here even when it's being buffeted by the wind. Sitting in the middle, excuse the pole, then that wall is there. So if you were packing a bag, you could stuff stuff in your pack in here, you know, quite easily, even in this weather. And this is inside the Durston. The wind has dropped off a little, but all I've done is I've just dropped the ground sheet. So you could just put a ground sheet on the ground. Obviously, well, you can't go over to the left, because if you go over to the left anyway, you've got the poles in the way. So you're kind of forced to be, in this shelter, you're kind of forced to be down the middle of it. And this is probably not a bad place to be, you know. You can't sit up as far. Your shoulders are here and here, so note this, just note this, when you're sitting up on your knees, shoulder here next to, this is interesting, shoulder here next to, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? So shoulders are right next to you when you're sitting up. When you're down at ground level, in both of them, you've got plenty of space all around you. Headroom, obviously, is the same as long as you're inside the pole and you have, you know, plenty of headroom. Interior wise, this wall here is coming in. So if you're sleeping in here and you're pitching tail to the wind, then this wall here is going to come into you. It's not coming in so much now because it's not so windy now, but this wall will still come in at you when you're in the middle, the same as the Duomid. You know, there's plenty of space each side. You've got a gap. We're not pitched on flat ground here. We're not in your local park. You know, there's a lump over there. You know, there's a small lump there. So you're not necessarily going to get this pitched right to the ground. You could lower your pole a little bit, but the same as the Duomid, if you do that, you're probably going to adjust the structure of it, you know, a little bit. Would I be getting one of these? Probably not anytime soon, to be fair with you. I think if I was making more money, subscribe, like, watch to the end, money on YouTube, then I might be more inclined to, you know, to get one, just to see what it's, you know, what it's like. But I don't think there's enough in this to turn me into a tent person, because effectively this is a tent. It's a walking pole tent, but effectively it's a tent. And there's not enough here that would warrant me, you know, becoming a tent person. I don't want an inner when it's not really necessary. It's too confining. You know, you're stuck in that little space. Some people like the tent space, you know, some people like that inner. But I would prefer to have, you know, the shelter as, you know, as a whole, you know, and then be able to put stuff. I know if I haven't got the inner, I could put stuff there, I can put stuff here. But the shape is still, for me, you know, a little bit awkward, you know, but not that much. That's being a bit picky. I just like to have, space, you know, along here or here. I know, I'm just finding things, aren't I? Let's face it, most of you have turned off by now anyway. But yeah, so it's a nice shelter. You know, if you're looking for a tent and you want something that clearly can withstand 20 plus mile per hour winds, you know, if you're a tent person, I think you'd be happy with this. And of course you don't have to use the inner if you don't want to. It's just it's just obviously because of these poles, you kind of got to have your bed at a slight angle.
Because of that angle, either your feet or your head will be very, very close to an edge. And if you're not pitched quite close to the ground, you could get wet there from water getting under the fly.
If I place myself strategically, I can touch everywhere. I think where I am up here is in a more windy spot, because I've literally just come up here from down there, and it just feels when I come up here more windy. Let's do a couple of tests in here just for okay. All right. Okay, so we're in the Duomid now. So obviously this is this wall here. That's that wall there. Bearing in mind that this wall is being blown in. That's that wall behind, and then I can just touch that wall over there. Height, obviously you can't quite touch, you can't touch the top. The Durston will definitely appeal to, you know, to some people. I'm just used to this configuration, and you still get, you know, the gap around the bottom. Again, you're going to get that, you know, to some degree with the Durston. If you're pitched on uneven ground, it's going to be quite difficult to, you know, to get every single side close to the ground. Because this is a little bit wider, but there really wasn't very much in it. If you do go in the middle of this with an A-frame, you are going to have, you know, a little bit more separation from you to the outside wall, because it's a little bit wider.
I think it was about 6 inches wider, that's also, you know, barely 3 inches each side, not much in it.
This is very, very noisy, but then, like I said, we're higher up and we're taking the full brunt of this wind. Anyway, I hope that you have found this series of videos sort of looking at the Duomid and the Durston. I hope you found them interesting and informative. Yes, my opinion is probably slightly skewed to this, simply because of what I've used for, you know, so long.
I think for me, I like my porch space all in one place.
But I think I've shown you everything. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what I think or what my opinion is. You know, I've shown you everything. You can look, you can watch the videos, and then it's up to you to make your own decisions on what is better for you. If you're enjoying this video, like, subscribe, share, notification button, all.